Welcome back to the Adam Schefter podcast as we head straight into Week 9 and the NFL trade deadline. Tuesday, November 4th, 4 p.m. Eastern. Should be notable, should be activity. We'll see how much of it there actually is. We also have a huge game this upcoming weekend. The Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs. Another showdown between those two great teams coming off a week where we could use some good games. There was only one game this past week in Week 8 that was decided by single digits. Usually, you get all these games, all this action that is really exciting and interesting. And this past week, with all due respect to the National Football League, it was not like that. One of the 11 Sunday games were decided by single digits, which was really the lowest percentage of games decided by single digits on a Sunday since the 1970 season. The NFL prides itself on close games. This was not one of those weeks. So you know what that means, Ty Schmit? It means that Week 9, we are due for some great NFL action. As I mentioned, Ty Schmit, the co-host of the Pat McAfee Show, my friend, my colleague, and the man who will lead us on this week's Six Pack.
Thank you very much, Schefty. Listen, we talked about it a couple weeks ago, and I'm not one to look a gift horse in the mouth. You know, we thought we had a bad slate a couple weekends ago. Man, it is just tough. It is tough watching that, you know, especially if your team's not playing till like Sunday Night Football and you're thinking, oh, I'll just get a nice relaxing day. I'll sit back and enjoy a couple tight ones, a couple barn burners. Boy, we certainly didn't get that. But like you said, it's a week-to-week league. So I think for whatever reason, I'm guessing we're going to get, 10 games that'll be decided by a field goal or less this weekend. That's typically how it works.
And, of course, the one game that was decided by single digits last week was the Bengals and the Jets. The Jets get their first win of the season. And, of course, that would eliminate me from my last survivor pick of the season. And so I took out two entries with my two brother-in-laws at the beginning of the year. I lost one of them when Amari DiMercato dropped the ball against the Tennessee Titans, and I had Arizona the week they played Tennessee out. And I had the Cincinnati Bengals at home this past week against the New York Jets when they blew a 15-point second-half lead, a 14-point fourth-quarter lead. I don't know that you could lose two games more improbably than I lost my two survivor picks this season, Ty.
Yeah, I don't think so. And you know what? Unfortunately, that's typically whenever you do get eliminated from one of those survivor pools, somehow you have the worst beats of anyone. I mean, that's the way it works, unfortunately. But we got a lot of stuff to talk about today, Shefty. Pretty loaded in terms of topics. Let's get right to it. And topic number one of this week's Six Pack. There was a lot of controversy and kind of, I don't know if you'd say mystery surrounding the Ravens injury report this week with Lamar Jackson returning to practice and then retroactively, being downgraded at practice. And obviously he doesn't play on Sunday. The line swings big time. If you can kind of just walk me through that entire situation and maybe the repercussions from it. And also, do we know yet, is Lamar planning on returning on Thursday against the Dolphins?
Well, let's start with this. The Ravens play Thursday night at Miami against the Dolphins. And Lamar Jackson was a full participant in practice on Monday. And the Ravens head coach John Harbaugh said he does expect Lamar Jackson to play Thursday night in Miami against the Dolphins. So after missing 3 games, Lamar is expected back. Now, let's look at some of the events of last week. There are some really interesting elements to this whole thing. It comes in a week in which we saw Terry Rozier and Chauncey Billups both arrested with some sort of connection, alleged connection to gambling activity. I would venture to tell you that if what happened with the Ravens this last week happened in any other week where there was not the arrests of Terry Rozier and Chauncey Billups, it might not have gotten the attention that it did. But the Ravens listed Lamar Jackson as a full participant in practice on Friday, when in fact he was running the scout team, which by rule means you should be listing him as limited in participation. This comes literally about 24 plus hours after both Terry Rozier and Chauncey Billups are arrested. And Ty, the line in the Ravens-Bears game goes from Ravens favored by 6.5 to 2.5. There was a 4 or 5 point swing in the line as soon as it was noted that Lamar wasn't playing on Saturday. When do we see a line drop 5 points? Now,
Almost never.
Now, here's where I think it's very interesting. The Ravens won by 2 touchdowns. If the Ravens had won by a game-winning field goal, 3, and their margin of victory came in between where the lines had dropped, would we have had class action lawsuits against the National Football League?
I think you could argue that for sure. Yeah.
I think everybody caught a break in the fact that the Ravens won by 14 points, that there was no sort of controversy or issues beyond what had happened. But the NBA already has gone out of its way to issue new guidelines with injury reports and statements, and I think the NFL now is going to follow in a similar line while they investigate the Ravens. I think what's going to come out of this is they're going to talk to people this week, and I think we're going to see fines for the Baltimore Ravens. Fine or fines, one or the other. But I don't expect, I could be wrong here in this day and age where there's such sensitivity to gambling activity. I don't think they'll lose any draft picks. I don't think anybody's getting suspended. I think it was a mistake, and I think there'll be fines, just like there were last week for the New York Giants for their concussion protocol violations when Brian Daboll poked his head near the tent, the blue medical tent that you're not supposed to, and the team was fined, I think, $250,000 and Daboll $100,000 and Cam Scatterbo $15,000. I think we'll see something along those lines. Is what the Ravens did worse than what the Giants did? I don't know about that. But in this day and age, where there's such sensitivity to gambling activity, where we witnessed last week one of the bigger scandals in recent sports history, the league is going to think, I think the league is going to crack down here. I think the Ravens wind up getting a fine or fines. And I think the league and the Ravens got a little fortunate that Baltimore won by 14 points.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, you know, it's just the optics of everything. Like you said, given with what is going on in the NBA right now, is just wrong place, wrong time. I mean, obviously, anyone with a brain would immediately assume, like, well, the Ravens as a franchise are worth about $8 billion. Having this, you know, harebrained scheme to swing the line in a game, you know, to maybe a lot of people saying make a couple bucks off it. Like that obviously isn't the case. So yeah, it just they got caught kind of, you know, in a bad spot. And obviously, like you said, I don't know if the NFL is going to make an example of them, but just given with what's going on in the betting climate right now, like this kind of does need to be a hard and swift. Hey, we're not doing this kind of stuff. You're not going to put your starting quarterback, you know, on the injury report and let everyone know that he's completely fine, he's healed, and then people bet it, and then all of a sudden, you know, 24 hours later, it's like, well, actually, he didn't practice yesterday. So I understand both sides of it, and hopefully, like you said, it'll kind of just get dealt with, and we won't have to worry about this kind
And
of stuff again.
one final note before we move on to topic 2. As somebody who reports on injuries over the weekend every single week and has done so for years, I find it interesting. Some teams really don't care. Like, hey, go ahead. Yeah, you could say he's out. Or some coaches very transparent, other coaches and organizations not. And like, let's applaud Kyle Shanahan during his press conferences. Couldn't be more transparent. Tells you exactly where his team is at. This guy, I expect to play this week. This guy, I don't. And they go out and they win or they don't. Like, I've never been a coach, but does it really matter that you know that the guy is or isn't playing? The team still has to perform. And there are other organizations that are so careful and particular about injury information. And in my mind, it's like, either you're going to go play the game the right way and make the plays, or you're not. Whether this guy's playing and it comes out in advance. Certain teams get so sensitive about all this. And the fact of the matter is, it's on the teams, no matter who's playing, when that information comes out. Is it that much of an advantage if the Chicago Bears know that Lamar Jackson or Tyler Huntley's playing? Like, if Tyler Huntley's the guy, the opportunity's there for you to go win the game no matter what.
Yeah, and I think, you know, maybe the competitive advantage angle, that maybe applies 20 years ago, 25 years ago when there was no Twitter. Information is so readily available now that whether it's coming from someone like you or just a leak, just some random Twitter account that figures out something, like you can find stuff out, much easier now than you maybe could 20 years ago. So I mean, I agree with you. And I get it. You want a competitive advantage is a real thing, sure, but like you said, you're realizing almost instantly, oh, Lamar Jackson's not playing today when you get out there anyway. So I don't know how much it changes.
My point is the NFL can come up with all the rules they want. Here's what I would just say. Just appeal to common sense and transparency. This guy was full participant. This guy is going to play. This guy's not going to play. It's pretty simple. We don't have to make it out to be more than it is and create the issues that arose last week in Baltimore. Just be honest about it. Just be forthcoming about it. And let's see where it goes.
Yeah, and especially with how much more integrated gambling is. Like, gambling's not going anywhere, unless there's another massive scandal. Like, this is going to be a part of the week-to-week culture of the NFL. So, yeah, I mean, they got to get it figured out, and I'm sure they will. All right, Schefter, let's move on to topic number 2. We do this with about one running back every single year, or at least we have for the last several years. Is Jonathan Taylor, is he in the MVP conversation? Like, is he a legitimate candidate? Do you think there's actually a chance he could win MVP
Well,
this year?
let's start with this, Ty. If they were giving out the award today in late October, after week 8, Jonathan Taylor, I think, would be the MVP of the National Football League today. But they're not. They've got to play 9 more weeks of the season, 10 more weeks of the season, and there is a lot of football left. And traditionally, typically, historically, this has been a quarterback award. The last 12 National Football League Most Valuable Player awards have all been won by quarterbacks. And the chances are that this year again, it'll be won by a quarterback, whether it's Patrick Mahomes, whether it's Baker Mayfield, whether it's Josh Allen, whether it's Daniel Jones, whether it's whoever it is you come up with the guy, Bo Nix, Sam Darnold. It's been a quarterback award. For a running back to win it, you need the kind of year that Saquon Barkley had last year, in which he didn't even win the award, or you need the kind of year that Jonathan Taylor is now having, where he is on pace to score 28 touchdowns this season, where he has had 4 games of hat-trick touchdowns, 4 3-touchdown games, where he is running it down opponents' throats, where he has been the difference. He has been the most valuable player in the league through 8 weeks. But again, it's a 17-week season in the National Football League, and typically these quarterbacks emerge and win. Nobody can deny the greatness of Jonathan Taylor. The Colts paid him, it seems like a distant memory when he was holding out, and he has been worth the price of that contract so far. In fact, I wonder now, I have to look at that contract to see how much time is left in his contract and if he'd come back to the Colts to try to get more money, because in the National Football League, you got to get paid when you can. You can't wait. And we'll see if Taylor decides to come back and get more money if this all continues. But his season right now has been incredible. He's having the kind of year that LaDainian Tomlinson once had for the Chargers, that Sean Alexander had for the Seahawks when he won the NFL MVP, and Taylor's having that kind of year. It's just he's up against it in the fact that it's not been an MVP award. It's been the MVP quarterback of the league over the last 12 years.
Yeah, and, you look at the MVP odds right now, with how many quarterbacks are up there, it's hard to envision, anyone else kind of coming up and jockeying that spot away. But he's not vulturing touchdowns either. I mean, he's having
Right.
150, 175, 200-yard games on top of having 3 touchdowns. I don't know. I wonder if it's one of those things where if the Colts go 16-1 and he scores 30 touchdowns, do you have to give it to him? I suppose we'll see, but I think we know, like, the league also wants to give it to a quarterback, I think, because it's the most important position in sports.
By the way, as our great producer Dan Stanzik points out, Jonathan Taylor, 1 year left on his deal after this season. You know what that means? If Jonathan Taylor does continue this throughout the year, if the Colts go on an extended playoff march, if Jonathan Taylor somehow winds up MVP, I can guarantee you he's going back to the Colts front office to have that deal redone after this season. I promise you that's coming.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, and like you said, well deserved, well earned.
By the
I
way,
mean,
did the Eagles give Saquon Barkley more money after 1 year when he had the kind of year that he did last year? Yes, they
yes, they
did.
did. Yeah, exactly, and I mean, teams Daniel Jones obviously has been a great story. He's been unbelievable. Jonathan Taylor makes them go. I mean, he makes they are so multiple when he's on the field. He just gives them such a different dimension. And not, again, he's one of those home run guys where all of a sudden, it's 0-0 on, and it's been a cagey affair or whatever, and then he busts out an 80-yard touchdown, and all of a sudden the momentum swings completely. The place is going crazy. Like he's been absolutely phenomenal. All right, Shefty, let's move on to topic number 3 of this week's six pack. We are officially about a week out from the trade deadline. A couple weeks ago, you set the over under for number of trades at 15. At that
Right.
point, we had already had a couple. Where do you stand today, a week out?
We've had 5 in the month of October leading up to the trade deadline so far. We had Cam Robinson, the offensive tackle, traded. We had 3 that 1 week, Joe Flacco, Adafe Owe, and the cornerback trade between the Browns and the Jaguars. And then on Monday, we had the Rams acquiring cornerback Roger McCreary. That's 5 trades leading up to the trade deadline. I estimated the over-under at 15. It looks like the under is going to come in right now, but I do think that we're going to get some activity between now and the Tuesday, November 4th, 4 p.m. Eastern trade deadline. I'm still counting and waiting on deals for wide receivers. We've got the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Buffalo Bills, the Denver Broncos, other teams that have made calls about wide receivers. We've got the New Orleans Saints sitting on a collection of wide receivers in which I think at least one will be dealt. And if I had to bet, I would say Rashid Shaheed is the guy that interests most teams for his speed and his talent, and the guy whose contract is up after this year, who the Saints, I think, would be most willing to part with if the compensation were fair and right. I think the Saints are going to want to keep Chris Olave. Brandon Cooks could be traded for the 5th time in his 12 NFL seasons. So again, between Shaheed and Cooks, potentially at least 1, maybe 2 Saints wide receivers who are traded. The New England Patriots have been open to moving off their former franchise or transition safety, Kyle Duggar. We'll see if that happens. I would bet he's no longer a Patriot by the time the trade deadline comes around on Tuesday, November 4th. I think the Miami Dolphins will move at least one of their pass rushers, Jalen Phillips or Bradley Chubb. I think we'll get some other activity here. At some point in time, the Minnesota Vikings are going to have to add a veteran quarterback. I don't think it's a high-profile move, but look, when they traded Sam Howell before the season, they had Carson Wentz waiting in the wings. Carson Wentz has season-ending shoulder surgery. 2 quarterbacks on their roster are J.J. McCarthy and Max Brosmer, 2 young quarterbacks. Vikings have to add a veteran quarterback at some point in time here. You would think by the trade deadline, we'll see what happens there with the Minnesota Vikings. So, again, if we get 1 Saint receiver, 1 Dolphin defensive end, Kyle Duggar, a quarterback for the Vikings, that's 4 moves right there. There'll be other moves. So 5, 6, 7 moves in the next week. We had 5, gets us to a dozen, roughly. That's about where I would expect it to come in. But you know what? Maybe it comes in a little light. Maybe it comes in a little more. I think there's going to be a flurry of activity after next week. One move I'm not expecting A.J. Brown to be traded, despite all the conversation. And what you always wonder about, Ty, is there a move coming that nobody can see right now? Is there some kind of big name floating out there that the media has missed, whose name has not been out there, who all of a sudden is traded right before the deadline? Sometimes that happens. All of a sudden, a name creeps up. I'm like, ooh, I didn't know that this guy was going to be dealt. Chase Young a couple of years ago when Washington traded him to San Francisco. Last year, I think Marshawn Lattimore came up late. Maybe his name had come up. There was another name that came up, but there's usually like a name that, for all the talk that we've had about the Saints receivers and the players in the Titans roster and Kyle Duggar and all these moves, there's one name like, whoa, I didn't know that Ty Schmit was available at the trade deadline. I didn't know that, right? So, again, we've had 5 trades. I'm projecting right now like an election day. I'm projecting 12 precincts to report, 12 trades to come in, and we'll see whether or not that actually happens.
Do you think teams like, like the Commanders after last night, who are the oldest team in the NFL, and Jaden Daniels, who knows how long he's going to be hurt for, like teams like that who you never want to say like their season is over after this past Sunday, but teams who kind of understand the situation they're in, do you think we will see more teams that kind of declare, "Hey, we are selling," or do you think that's still going to be a pretty close to the vest type deal through this weekend?
I think teams like the Commanders probably still think that they can make a run. How about a team like the Bengals or the Giants coming off tough losses? Like,
Mhm.
would they look, the Bengals are not typically active at the trade deadline, but would they look at moving off of a veteran, right? Um, so those are the kinds of things you have to consider. I think Washington probably still feels like it can make a run if it gets back Jaden Daniels, but the season has slipped away really quick from the Commanders right now, and it doesn't look like it's going to be the type of season that Washington was hoping and expecting. And I'm trying to think of a player on their roster like, okay, well, look at this guy. Like, maybe he would be a difference maker for another team. I don't know if they have a lot of them. It's an older roster. We'll see if they decide to do something. But again, like I said, we're going to get some activity between now and next Tuesday. We'll be back on this podcast Thursday to talk about some of that. We'll be back next Tuesday. In fact, we're taping this now. Next Tuesday, we're going to move our normal time tower. We're going to tape after the trade deadline, if that's okay with you, in the afternoon. So we can
Perfect.
kind of look back on the moves, okay?
Yep, I think that makes sense. That's a
Great.
good move. And yeah, so there you go. I mean, if you're if you're a fan of one of these teams who's kind of teetering on the edge of, hey, we might make it to the playoffs, we maybe need to add one more piece, just be patient, because like Shefty said, it got hot there for a little bit and kind of cooled down. I think, teams obviously are waiting until the last possible second to kind of say, okay, maybe we do need to kind of move some of these guys. So we'll see, at the very least, hopefully we do get one or two of those marquee names that get moved, because that always makes the trade deadline more fun. All right, Shefty, let's move on to topic number 4 of this week's six pack. After a pretty lackluster first half, boy, the Packers looked very good in the second half on Sunday night, scoring 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. I don't know if you want to say Jordan Love exercised any demons, because I don't think that's the right way of putting it, but him playing the way he did with Rodgers on the other sideline, big deal. And now the Packers are the number 1 seed in the NFC. What's your take on the Packers as a whole and kind of the projected seeding, I guess, of
Yeah.
the NFC playoffs right now?
Well, I got 3 points to make on your Green Bay Packers, Ty, and you just mentioned one of them. Right now, they are the number 1 seed in the NFC. Now, the Detroit Lions are coming off a bye week, and I would imagine they'll have something to say about that. And the NFC's got a lot of other really good football teams: Philadelphia Eagles, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Los Angeles Rams, Seattle Seahawks, 49ers, like a lot of good teams in the NFC. But today, the road to the Super Bowl goes through Lambeau Field, which is kind of interesting. Point number 2, if Jordan Love plays the way he did on Sunday night on a consistent basis, Green Bay is a favorite to get to and maybe even win the Super Bowl. But they
Yes.
need Jordan Love to play like that every week. I don't know if he's going to complete 20 straight passes the way he did against the Pittsburgh Steelers, but he played great. And if he's playing at that level, they're going to be tough to beat. And here's my third and final point. We're talking about the Green Bay Packers being the current number 1 seed in the NFC, with Jordan Love playing at a high level that, if he continues that, might make them the favorite potentially in the NFC. But think about this. If they're the number 1 seed in the NFC, you know who that hurts a lot?
Who's that?
The Dallas Cowboys, who have the Green Bay Packers first-round pick. Can you imagine if the Green Bay Packers are the number 1 seed and that draft pick, that first-round draft pick that Dallas owns, is maybe pick 32, maybe pick 31, maybe pick 29? Would you trade Kenny Clark, pick number 30, and a future 1 for Micah Parsons? Huh. With every win that the Packers have, the better they look, the worse it is for the Dallas Cowboys draft position. And the worse it makes that trade look, especially when Dallas has an incredible offense and needs a player like Micah. Yes, they saved his salary. Yes, they're going to add a lot of players. Yes, they have the draft. Dallas did what it could, but it comes back to the fact of why not auction that pick off last March when teams had more cap space, when more teams would have been bidding, when the return on Micah would have been greater. But they waited. The opportunity wasn't as great. And now that they've traded him to the Green Bay Packers, you're looking at that pick not being all that high, Ty.
Well, and like as a Packers fan, that that was my take from the get-go. It was like the Packers don't make a move like that trading for Micah Parsons unless they believe they are a Micah Parsons away from winning a Super Bowl. Like they felt like they had everything they needed. Hey, we're going to make this guy the highest paid defensive player, in the history of the game. We're good with sending a couple of the so unless the Cowboys were thinking it's almost like you had to imagine that Jordan Love was going to get hurt or something for those picks to because that was always what it was going to be. I felt was hey at the very least that pick that you're giving away is going to be 26 and or 27 and you can deal with that. And we've mentioned it time and time again. And this isn't me just being a homer because I'm a Packers fan. There are only a handful of legitimate game records in the NFL. Micah is absolutely at the top of that list. 6.5 sacks already. He has single-handedly, his arrival in Green Bay has made Rashawn Gary one of the best edge rushers in the NFL. I think they showed his stats all of last year. He's already eclipsed what he did all of last year in 7 games this year. And Micah Parsons on the other side is a big, big part of that. Yeah, I'll tell you what, Shefty, after that Sunday night and seeing Jordan Love play like that and the defense kind of get stops when they need to and get after the quarterback when they need to, after a couple so-so performances, I'm back. If the Packers play their A game, I don't know if anyone's better than them.
And Micah allows them to rush only 4 defenders. Like they blitzed once all of Sunday night. And yet they still got tremendous pressure on Aaron Rodgers rushing 4, which allows the cornerbacks to be better because they can gamble more, take more chances, which is exactly what happened on Sunday night. These guys are playing with more confidence than they've had because the rush is greater and the quarterback's got less time to throw. So that one player has made a huge difference for everybody on that defense, and that one player is going to boost Green Bay's record, we think, and that one player is going to mean that Dallas's first-round draft pick from Green Bay might not be as high as the Cowboys once had hoped.
Yeah, just it still kind of feels like bizarro world that Micah Parsons is on the Packers, but boy, I would do that trade over 7 days of the week and 10 times on Sunday. So I'm very happy that Jerry was done with him, and the Packers, boy, they are very happy that Micah is in Green Bay. All right, Shefty, let's move on to topic number 5 of this week's 6-pack. The Broncos made just light work of the Cowboys on Sunday and what was probably, one of our games of the week. Very excited to watch that one. Obviously, not as thrilling as we thought it might be. Made it look easy, but also now they potentially miss Patrick Surtain for a little bit. He gets hurt. Do you have any more updates on that situation?
Well, it's a big loss, and I last night the organization did not think that he was going to have to go on injured reserve, which would automatically sideline him for 4 games, but it certainly sounds like he's going to miss some time. They have upcoming games this week against the Houston Texans. They play the Kansas City Chiefs on November 16th, I believe, and they're going to want Surtain back for that game to see if he can cover Rashee Rice, who nobody seems to be able to cover these days. But here's the thing and the point that I wanted to raise on the Denver Broncos and why I wanted to get to this topic today. I want to credit my friends at Altitude Radio, Altitude Network. I'm not even sure the actual name, but I do a radio spot every Thursday with my friends and colleagues, Darren McKee, D-Mac, Scott Hastings, Tyler Columbus, and we were talking about the Broncos defense and the greatness of it early on and the rush that they create. And so they brought up, hey, we need a nickname for this Broncos defense. And D-Mac, Darren McKee, brought up the name ABC, something like Zach Allen, Nick Benito, and C, Jonathan Cooper. He wanted it to be the ABC defense. I'm like, why are we making this out to be any harder than it is? There has to be a nickname that's off of the great famed Orange Crush defense that everybody knows and associates with Denver. They wore the uniforms on Sunday. Those are the Orange Crush uniforms. And so I think Scott Hastings pointed out, maybe one of the listeners did, Orange Rush. Just drop the C. Just
Pretty
drop
good.
the C. He's going into ABC. Just drop. It's the Orange Rush. That is the clear successor to the Orange Crush defense. So the Broncos now have the Orange Rush. And I just think that name is so perfect for that defense because it's an Orange Rush, right? Perfect. Great nickname for a great defense, for a defense that can make the difference, has made the difference early on, got tremendous pressure on Dak Prescott. I mean, that is a great nickname for this Broncos unit, Orange Rush.
Unbelievable. And you know what? It's malpractice if someone in Denver doesn't already have that on T-shirts waiting on the back of seats, because that's the other part of this. We've talked about, how they could set the NFL single-season sack record. You don't become one of those iconic defenses unless you have a nickname, and you can't just run back Orange Crush. So, boy, I think, listen, I don't love that it kind of...
Ty, listen, I don't know if it's padding. Have the people in the office, Pat's office, look into that today and see if they could patent that.
That's an excellent idea. I will be doing that as soon as I get
Orange
off the
Rush.
show
I mean, come on.
It's tailor-made for you. Now, I think some people would say that kind of diminishes what Patrick Surtain and Riley Moss have done, but
no,
the Orange Rush is also what's allowing them to, have the ball production numbers and all that kind of stuff.
Hey,
so I think you're right.
Hey, tell your boss there, okay? He's a pretty savvy businessman, okay? Just shout out to him that you want Orange Rush patented right now. We want that. We want that nickname right now.
Done. Adding it to my notes.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, I love that. So, yeah, Orange Rush. From here on out, you won't ever hear me refer to that defense as anything but the Orange Rush. So, thank you, Schefter. Thank you for whoever, eloquently thought of that.
Coined that phrase, right?
Yeah, it's genius. It's absolutely genius. All right, Schefter, it is time for the sixth and final topic of this week's six-pack. Going into week 9, top 6 power rankings. Who you got?
Okay, I wrote out my list this week, and I'm really undecided on number 6. I think the top 5 are very clear. I'm going to go, as I did last week, Kansas City at number 1. Rashee Rice has just changed the complexion of that team. The offense is operating at a higher level than it operated at any point last year when they went to the Super Bowl. Chiefs 1. Your Indianapolis Colts 2, with MVP candidate Jonathan Taylor. Running over people, been great. Your Green Bay Packers 3. By the way, what would happen if it was Indy Green Bay in the Super Bowl, Ty?
Oh, I might die.
Oh, my God, that'd be crazy for you, right? I just thought of that because I got Indy 2 and Green Bay 3 in my weekly power rankings. 4, I'm going with the Detroit Lions, coming off a bye, get the Vikings at home. Ideal matchup. J.J. McCarthy, face him this weekend. Detroit is a team I think you need to worry about in the NFC.
I agree.
As a Packers fan.
I agree.
And they're going to be primed for that Thanksgiving Day matchup against you. Team number 5, I overlooked them last week. I'm not doing it again. I know they're coming off a bye, but I think they're that good. The Los Angeles Rams at number 5. So the question at 6 is, who do we want to put in? Philly, Buffalo, Denver, Seattle? Like, you can go with a lot of teams at number 6. A lot. I guess I'm going to give the Eagles the nod just because they're the defending Super Bowl champs. I'd like to go with the Broncos. I'd like to go with the Bills. I'd like to go with the Buccaneers. I'd like to go with the 6, there's a lot of ways you can go. A lot of ways you can go. We'll let them fight it out right now, but I feel pretty good about my first 5. Chiefs, Colts, Packers, Lions, Rams. 6 wide open.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's a good list because, it's interesting. If you look on any outlets like Power Rankings, I think the first 10, the top 10, you can really point to any of those and be like, wow, I could see them in the top 5.
I even forgot the Patriots who I put on the list. They won. They deserve to be there too. Like the Patriots at 6. Like maybe it's hard again.
But that's why it's
a lot of good teams.
Exactly, and that's why it's a fun exercise because it really does make you have to whittle down because I think we know after that 10, that's where there's kind of an extreme drop-off, and it's like, okay, these teams aren't going to win the Super Bowl, but I think a lot of those top 10, you could argue could win the Super Bowl. Mine was very similar to yours, Schefter. I had the Colts at number 1, Chiefs at number 2, Packers number 3, Lions number 4, Eagles number 5, and then I went with the Bills at number 6.
Yeah, I can see that. But by the way, look, we mentioned the 5 teams, and then again, the Patriots, the Bills, the Bucks, the Broncos, the Seahawks. So really there are 10 to 12 teams that you can make a legitimate argument for being the Super Bowl representative, winning. Like, it feels like it's pretty wide open, that there's not one team, as good as the Chiefs have been, as good as the Colts have been, as good as the Packers have been, as good as the Lions have been, the Rams, like any of these teams is good enough to go up and seize a spot in the weekly power rankings or make an extended run of the playoffs. A lot of interesting teams here as we get ready here for the second half of the stretch run, right?
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think, like initially, and especially when we've been talking, the narrative there for a couple weeks was, wow, the NFC this year is actually much better than the AFC. Just much deeper. But when you look at the power rankings, and we'll see what the Bills do here, it's possible that the AFC has the two best teams in the NFL.
By the way, okay, so you take the Chiefs and the Colts, but then we add in the Patriots, the Bills, the Broncos. Like, my point is that it's very solid in each conference. The 7 teams in each conference that can go to the playoffs, going to be a really strong playoff field.
Yes, I agree. And every year, some people whine about that 7th team getting in, being like, that's not a playoff team. I think this year, I really do think as of right now, at least, we'll see what happens. But man, the field is looking very solid on both sides of the league.
Someone in the NFC is going to get left out.
Yes.
And it's going to be interesting to see who doesn't make it in the end there. But that'll be a lot of fun. And we'll see how the trade deadline factors into this, because some of these teams will be making moves to enhance their roster in the next week. And, of course, we'll be back in this spot Thursday and next Tuesday post-trade deadline to look back at some of these moves that we think are up ahead. In the interim, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the Adam Schefter podcast. I want to thank you, Ty, for a great job this week, our great producer, Dan Stanzik, Ben Smith, you, the listener, for tuning into another Adam Schefter podcast. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy Week 9.